All right, welcome back everyone to Good Vibes. I'm Martin False, and our transformation coach is once again in the house, Debbie Cox DeNova. Debbie, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You're dressed in red. You ready for the occasion?
I am. I'm ready.
All right, so we've been having some good topics. People have been getting involved in it, and we got some more good ones for the year.
Yes.
I can't wait to get to one on flirting. I'm throwing them a hint.
Yes.
That's a good one. All right, but bringing out the best in kids. I would think it's more of a mother's interest, but you're probably going to correct me and say dads need to be interested too.
Absolutely, and everyone actually, whether you are a parent or not, this is a conversation that you may find super relevant to you. When it comes specifically to kids, research shows that now 1 in 5 kids show signs of psychological disorder. UNICEF did a study and found that American children in particular were the second unhappiest in the world. So we're facing quite a crisis. This should not be the case when it comes to children. Children should be naturally present and attuned and happy, when things are going well. And so this research comes from Dr. Shefali Tsabary, who is a 3-time New York Times bestseller author. She's also a clinical psychologist, and she wrote a book called Conscious Parenting. And Dr. Shefali really points back to the parents when it comes to the unhappiness of most kids. And the reason this is true is because if we are operating from an unconscious place, which most people are, what we will very naturally do when children come into the picture is that we'll project all of our mental crap, is what she called it, onto the children, right? So parents like to think that we are, we're always right, and we defend our right to be right, and it's our job from the very beginning as parents and guardians to sort of show the children don't know anything, right? Like, show me what to do, how to do it, and so we automatically will step into a role where it's like we are the ones who know things and the children are not. The problem, though, is that when we come, all of us, we're basically living out legacies of being handed checklist. So when we come, we're handed a checklist from our own parents, and this is how to do life, right? This makes you good, this makes you bad. This is the meaning of life. This is what God is. This is what religion is. This is what it means to be a good person, achievement, success. It all is on this checklist. And from the very beginning, there's sort of an unconscious communication that it's your job now to start checking off this list. And if you don't, you will not meet with my approval. And that, of course, we know we're hardwired for approval. So automatically from the very beginning, our children come to the planet, we come to the planet very present, very attuned, very abundant in our energy, and very willing to lean in and surrender to life, right? You see a kid, 1 minute they're crying big tears, and then the very next minute they're skipping off gleefully, beginner's mind, right? Just completely fresh and new. They're willing to risk, they're willing to take pain, and they don't carry it with them, especially the younger, this is true, the younger that we go. But what happens is that we are taught through conditioning to look outward and to show our worth and prove our worth to the outside world, even at the expense of cutting ourselves off. And the good children are the ones who do this the best, right? So the kids that we call the golden children, the really good kids, what they've learned to do, in essence, really well, is to self-reject. So they abandon themselves in order to meet the expectations of the outside world, whatever they may be. Whereas the black sheep sometimes are the ones who get past the conditioning and still stay true to themselves, the rebels, the ones that kind of buck the system, right? In a sense, they are more attuned to the way that we're supposed to be in life. It's really tricky, though.
When do you morph from the conditioning that your parents give you, because as a kid you're going, Mom and Dad are always right, but then you start getting other conditions from teachers.
Culture,
So the parents have to be willing to let you skip a little bit over to the conditions.
Oh yeah, for sure. And a lot of people, to answer your question, don't ever get over the conditioning. Like if it takes a certain level of consciousness and examining what you were given. We talked about beliefs before and how, do we really even have the right to call something a belief if we haven't examined it ourselves? But most people go through life and they just accept. They're basically born into this condition. They're handed packaged ideas and belief systems rather than being guided to certain topics and allowing them to explore themselves. They're like, no, this is the way that it's supposed to be. And the problem is that this is a legacy that's you just go back and back and back, and every family has their own package that they're handing, their own checklist that they're giving. And essentially, it doesn't really matter what the checklist says, because in one family, it could be like, you need to be a really good athlete, or you need to make really good grades in this family. You need to conduct yourself with a little bit more like sophistication. Like, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's like if wherever the child bumps up against their own proclivity, like their way of being, bumps up against what the expectations are, they begin to cut off. So to answer your question too, at some point in time, what happens is that the ego hits a rock bottom crisis. For moms, it can be like they went from mommy to being barely a chauffeur when they become teenagers, or maybe there's a midlife crisis, or somebody may end up, like Dr. Shefali said, throwing up on a bathroom floor, and that may be the rock bottom. But at some point in time, the ego hits that rock bottom, and that is the point at which you have a potential to sort of self-examine and come back to yourself and start honoring who you actually are in the world, no matter how it feels to other people. And that's the beautiful moment that you come back to childhood. We can do this for our children. Instead of molding them out of their flexibility and creating rigidity in them and shoving in certain things, we can allow them to be their independent selves. And then it goes back to that conversation that Brene Brown had about belonging instead of fitting in.
Some of the moms and dads were a little more strict, really hardline. And I watched some of my friends who were their kids rebel a little bit.
Yeah.
Later on, they came back in line, but they rebelled. So I watched all the dynamics taking place. When do you go too far as a parent, or is that up to each parental family to decide what the boundary is?
Such a great question, and it's not an easy question to answer. The thing that Dr. Shefali says is the absolute key, is that parents are willing to become conscious in themselves and recognize the healing process that needs to happen in themselves, bringing them back to their own, being responsive to their own inner voice. Because when they're able to do that, then they're able to allow it in their own children. We're projecting on our kids, basically. It's like, don't do that, that's a reflection of me. And there's a part of parents, if they're super honest, that feel like, okay, this is my chance to get it right. Everywhere I didn't get it right, like, now you have to be the star athlete. You have to do well with, and it's a representation of me. And so when the child is not representing well, there is a reactivity within the parent, which actually has more to do with the parent than the welfare of the child. And the child learns that either they have to rebel or they have to cut off parts of themselves in order to be approved by the parent. And the thing about this is that science is very clear that when it comes to the parent relationship with the child, it not only impacts their psychology and their emotionality, but their neurobiology as well. Kids who have a very good relationship, a healthy relationship with their parents, actually have a larger brain than those who come from an abused household. And we've talked about before the attachment styles, right? A secure attachment style is a healthy attachment style for a child. In order for that to happen, there has to be this give and take in the home where it's like you both allow the child to have that security of coming home and like being and being coddled, but also the independence to go out. So it's about kind of like what Dr. Shefali says, is that the good news is that there's a line, but it's a line in the sand and not in stone. It's always flexible, so it takes the parent being conscious and recognizing when it's time to guide the child and when it's time to let go and release. And when a child is feeling like it's not allowed its sovereignty, its independence, there will be like a slamming of the door or a rebellion, a sign that will show the parent, okay, maybe it's time to kind of like come back a little bit, right? I want you to eat healthy, but am I gonna shove broccoli down your throat?
Right.
I want you to go to bed at a reasonable time, but if your bedtime is 8, am I gonna lose my mind when it's 8:20 and you're still awake, right? We have to understand that these are actual malleable human beings, not robots, and they come with their own sovereignty and their own independence, and we have to allow for that while we guide them.
I'm one of 6 children. Later, before Dad died, I was sitting with him on the swing and talking about all kind of things. Now, him and Mama treated everybody basically the same, just loving Mama. Daddy treated everybody with a little bit different twist. I said, Dad, why were you so tough on me? You would go chalk the streets off a punt, pass, and kick. You would push me in athletics. He said, because you were the type of child that wanted the push. Not needed, wanted the push. Different kids want different things. I love to be pushed. But he knew that.
Exactly. And that's the thing is like, is being able to tell, like you're talking about very independent little beings. So we have to constantly remind ourselves that this is not a mini me. This is actually an independent being who came with an independent way of viewing the world. See, the thing that we do is that we try to prevent, because we try to have all of our lives try to prevent ourselves from pain, we'll try to prevent our children from having pain and risk, right? We'll try to like insulate them and protect them. The problem is that we have done that so much that most adults are now so rigid and so unwilling to take risks in life that they're willing to stagnate rather than go for their dreams, right? If we start to actually look at ourselves and go, you know what, we've been unsuccessful in preventing ourselves from pain because life comes with pain and life comes with unpredictability and chaos sometimes. And children already know that, right? They're out there fumbling and
parents
tumbling.
are screwing it like,
Yeah.
little Johnny's ready to go ride his bike without the training wheels, and mom's screaming, he can't do it, he might fall, and the dad's going to let him fall.
Exactly, exactly. So when we start to allow ourselves to experience pain as a teacher in life, to experience unpredictability, and really to surrender to life, that's what all of these, like the spiritual practices all lead back to, like that surrender experience. We start to learn that the kids actually have a lot to teach us or remind us about what it was like to be present with life, to actually come and explore and learn and do things for the joy of doing it, not because there's an agenda for achievement, right? When we start to allow that within ourselves, then we start looking at our children very clearly and stop trying to project our own expectations
Just
onto
real
them.
quick with a minute left. Yesterday I walked outside, 3 young kids were sitting by each TV with their skateboards jumping over curbs and doing things. And my first inclination was going, y'all gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
Then I pulled back, thought about my dad. I said, they're growing up.
Yes.
They're gonna have to figure it out on their own.
That's
so I
it.
just looked at them, y'all having fun? They said, yep. Okay, knock yourself out.
Yeah, you might get hurt, and that might be a really good thing for you, you know, a learning lesson. It's really, again, it goes back to that conversation about belonging to yourself that Brene Brown is teaching people, because before they hit that midlife crisis, you know, where life wakes you up and goes, hey, you're almost out of time. Let's go back to like what's important to you, right? Instead of trying to fit in and cut pieces of yourself off in order to fit into society or family's expectations, to belong to yourself first, to be loyal to yourself first and have that integrity, and then approach life that way, then you can allow children to do that too.
Just buy a lot of Bactine, Mercurochrome, I think Mom used to put on that burn like hell. But anyway, great topic.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
of course.
All right, we'll see you again next week. Once again, good vibes here with Debbie Cox DeNova. We'll see you around the corner.